Poe, who is are you ordained a minister, Dr. Poe?
Yes,
an ordained minister,
yes,
as well as a psychiatrist. And of course, I think that combination brings to us this morning very, very useful information about the relationship between crime and religion. And of course, Dr. Poe, you were talking about an inmate study that has been done, and let's continue that conversation and give us as much information as you would like to give us this morning so that our audience might come to a better understanding of what we as a community can do in order to deal with some of the problems of violence that we have in our society.
Right. Well, as we said earlier, we decided to include a spiritual assessment in our effort to better understand violence. And in addition, we did a sociological, psychological evaluation. We did psychological testing, and we also did a psychiatric evaluation. And the things that stand out the most about what we found is, as I said, we found that in many of the cases, 68% of the cases, there was an absent father from the home, and a small percentage of the cases, there was a hostile relationship between the father and the male child. And in some few cases, there was a hostile relationship between the male child, and the mom. But overall, we found that these families were essentially environments of hostility and rejection, okay? And what we think is, based on our research, that this gave rise to a feeling on the part of the young male: I'm no good, nobody cares about me, I'm worthless, I'm inferior, and since nobody cares about me, I don't care about myself. But in addition to that, it caused these young men to feel, or to make the decision that I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to get what I want, even if it involves mistreating and hurting other people. And as I said, 70% of these men believe that getting revenge was a way you deal with situations where somebody offends you or hurts you. And I think it's interesting because of the 30% of the men who said, you know, before I became involved in religion, before I began to pray, and before I began to worship, and they were able to attend worship service while in jail, I used to believe in trying to get even when somebody offended me, but now I try to handle it in some other way. So you can see that a faith in God, the effort to try to live a life pleasing to God, has a controlling effect on that urge to get even. It's hard to have an active faith in God and to believe in revenge at the same time. And so much of criminal behavior, especially murder, all right, so much of assaultive behavior has to do with, on the part of the person, an effort to get even with somebody that he or she thinks has offended them. So the motive of revenge is a very important motive in violent behavior. And a religious life, faith in God, participation in an active religion, trying to live a life pleasing to God, helps to put brakes on that desire to get even.
Now, with all of this information that we have available, and the earnest belief that things can be changed, that these young people or these people who are incarcerated can be changed if they have a different perspective, what are some of the things that can be done in society, in some more concrete things? I think that in a philosophical kind of way that you've mentioned several things that are important, but from not a philosophical method, but from a practical point of view, what can we do as a society to increase the self-esteem of these individuals, to break down this pattern of violence, and et cetera?
Well, I think what we need to do is to recognize the fact that we as human beings, we are much more spiritual beings than we are physical beings. And we're much more spiritual beings than we are psychological beings. And so with that in mind, if we're going to try to help people make lasting changes in terms of the way they believe and in terms of the way they behave, we're going to have to begin to call upon our spiritual resources. We need to develop counseling strategies that are essentially spirituality based. We need to develop psychotherapy strategies that are spirituality based. We need to develop intervention programs that are spirituality based. Unfortunately, most of our intervention, our psychotherapy, our counseling is psychologically based. You see, but we're much more spiritual than we are psychological or physical.
And not only that, I would imagine you would agree that if when you find a person of the cloth involved at a metropolitan jail, he's generally there to render sort of a limited kind of service. Perhaps to pray for an inmate, to bury somebody, and et cetera. But what you're talking about is opening up that chaplaincy of the various jails throughout this nation, and to bring into that particular environment some of the things that you're talking about. Is that what you're doing?
I think we need in the correctional system, and by the way, I've been involved in prison ministry and am involved in the Turney Center in West Tennessee and only Tennessee, and we go down there twice a month. I think what we need in our correctional system is a spirituality-based counseling or a spirituality-based psychotherapy. Okay? Now, what that would do is to help lead these inmates who've been so severely damaged by dysfunctional family situations, self-centered family situations, who've been so severely damaged in terms of their self-esteem or in terms of their self-image. We could begin to help them while they're in jail, while they're in confinement, to begin to alter their belief system. Because we've discovered that the core of a criminal belief system, or the core of an antisocial belief system, is the belief that I have a right to have my own way. And see, a religious belief system opposes that. The religious belief system says God has, and only God has, the right to have his own way. Okay? All right. So then we need spirituality-based counseling, spirituality-based psychotherapy available to the inmates while they're in jail so they can begin to alter their self-centered belief system. Okay? Then we need the same kind of a counseling available once they get out as a follow-up. Because we've found that oftentimes the guys turn to God while they're in prison, but then when they get out, they meet a cold, fearful community, all right, and there's almost no follow-up, and oftentimes they go back into that criminal lifestyle.
Dr. Poe, let me take this short commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this break to continue our conversation. The topic is crime.